The company I finally started off my career in the UK, professional career, I could actually say, I didn't apply for the role, and I'll take us through the journey.
Oh, wow. So let me go straight into it. Can you just tell me what sector you're currently working and your job title?
I still work in the power industry, still electronics industry, but much more on a different application. So my background is electrical electronics engineering, and what I currently do, I'm a lead project manager with General Electric, and what we do, basically lead project manager in General Electric with the naval sides of things, so naval, and what we do is we provide power and propulsion system for naval vessels, both above sea and below. So on a day-to-day, my sort of activity is basically program management. So resource, risk analysis, risk assessment for projects, delivery from the project inception to commissioning and handover. So all that comes in between, and just managing all the different phases of a project, which is quite interesting. But yeah, that's what I do.
What year did you complete your master's?
So I finished my master's 2016. So I came into the UK 2015. So yes, I finished my master's 2016.
Okay, so you would have needed a tier 2 visa, it was at the time. Number one, how did you find the job application process, landing your first job in project management, especially not having a background in it, not having a job background in it? What was the process of getting yourself sponsored with the company?
I mean, I would like to say first that where I currently work, the current role I'm in, is not where I started from. So this is not my first company. And so I worked first in a power generation industry. That was my first role as an assistant project manager. So I started as an assistant project manager. But I think it's good I just take us through the journey, as you rightly said, as to when I started applying, what sort of role did I apply for? And I'll be honest, of course, I took us through a journey of my background being electrical electronics, then coming in for my master's and having worked. It's just natural that I was going to go in for same sort of roles. So I started applying for electrical electronics role, power system roles, which is sort of my core. And then during my master's, I built so much interest in renewable energy. So I did my sort of thesis in renewable. So I started really diving into this industry and applying. And very interestingly, I think at my sort of second semester-ish of my master's, I got a lot of sort of very good feedback, companies that wanted to sort of get me on. And I'll give you one, actually. Just while I was writing my exams during my master's, which would be the second semester exams, I'd already got an interview, which is rare. When it comes, I won't say it's rare. Probably that's not the word. I would say you can get calls from recruiters, and then they can tell you, okay, they will try, you get as much recruiter calls, but for you to land a face-to-face interview, most times I see it as you're very close to it, for them to be able to invite you in for a face-to-face. So I had two businesses at the time. One was General Electric, which was absolutely, General Electric has always been a dream company for me. And then one other company, Amy. So these two companies had invited me for a core engineering role. So for the General Electric one, it was more to do with a high voltage DC engineer, and then for the AME was project engineering in the rail industry, in the rail industry. So I went for these roles, but very quickly it was, when they say dream shatters very. I mean, at the time I was, I can, without sort of trying to play any sort of trumpet and not being proud in any way, I was getting good grades in my studies. I was one of the top in my class. So it's not as though I don't have engineering in the tips of my fingers. Like if I read, I pass. Yeah. But while in front of these two big businesses and having this interview, and very quickly I'm asked questions of first principle, which should come in naturally. And I find myself really struggling. Now, you can ask me core questions I've studied. You can ask me core questions that I should calculate this and know, and I get ready, and I'll do it like this. But then first principle questions, and I'm a bit stuttering, and you can see that I can only exist for a short while if I dive into this space. And I remember finishing the first interview. So there's only sort of like two-phase interview, and I had like the first one, which it was a landslide. You did really well. They welcome you for the second one. Coming into the second one, and that's where I got hit with all these first principle questions. Just which I think the whole aim of that interview for the second one was just to get the natural instincts when it comes to engineering that would make you thrive and pushing. And unfortunately, I saw myself faltering. After that interview, I went back and I just told myself, to be honest, if you're missing first principles, do you really think you're called in for this? And so talking about the next, the company which I then started with, how did it happen? So my job hunt, it's quite an interesting one. I don't know if people went through it, but I mean, as coming in.
Please give details of your job hunting. Tell us how many, the number of jobs you applied for, some of the funny rejections you might have received. We definitely want to know that.
Honestly, I would say, because I really appreciate this platform first. So I thank you, Martin, for just inviting me. But I would also say that I've watched previous episodes, and one of the episodes was quite interesting, where one of your guests, Obina, was talking about 80 jobs, applying 80 jobs in total, and I just laughed. Because for me, my experience was I wake up in the morning, 20 to 40 jobs applications. So I will be lying to myself if I can count. I can't count how many applications I made. And I started my job hunting quite early. Again, another interesting one. I came into the uni. This next day, literally the next day, I went into the job board and applied for a role. So I think I am straight away. And there's a reason why I did that, because coming back from the sort of our home country, Nigeria space and all of that, you get to see that, and people say this, which is true. A role that is being advertised in some cases is already filled by persons, and that is just a mere show. So I said, you know what, I want to test the system. That is how enthusiastic I was, and very keen that, first of all, I can't leave this place. I have to get a job. So that day I applied, literally, it took probably a few hours. I got a response. The first shocker. Seriously, a company as big as this could respond to me. And it was so interesting because they didn't just only respond as an sort of like an automatic reply. They actually said, thank you so much, Sam, for applying. And we've looked through your CV, and it just looked like you've only just started up a program. Please, as soon as you're done, get back to us, and we would consider. And that was my first experience. So people have got different experiences, but that alone was a game changer in my perspective, in my mind, that this is possible. Yeah. So now just fast forward to when I then dived into like the everyday wake up in the morning 20 job application. I was literally applying I wouldn't say like a madman per se, but I was so enthusiastic about back to back. But I did it quite strategically, because as I came in, one of the first thing I did was I knew my CV isn't to par. Because of course, when you're coming into the country and your sort of style of format of CV, or for me back in Nigeria, it's just that format. I knew it wouldn't pass through any or get any sort of call from recruiters. So thankfully, the university where I was doing my master's, Coventry University, they had like a provision whereby internationals are given an opportunity where they can come in, have session with career advisors. Okay. They would go through your CV, knock it up to sort of the standard expected in the industry. So that was my first attack to getting my CV to where it should be as a start. Then quickly, I was also advised that you need to really understand how to put out your CV. For the fact that you've done 10, 20 roles in the past, if you're applying for a specific role, you need to tailor your CV to that role. Because when it comes into the job market and all, when recruiters are looking out for a particular role, it's like a login of information that they do like a search. So your CV needs to match to that for it to come out to the top. So you'll be able to have a chance to be called in terms of the first tier of people that comes up or CVs that comes up. So quickly, I had an understanding that for different roles, I had different CVs based on my experience. So because I've got project engineering experience, I had a CV for project engineering. Then I had a CV for core electrical electronics engineering. I had a CV for electrical engineering. I had a CV for based on my experience on electronics. So this was balancing out different CVs. So when I sit down with on the job board with different roles that comes up, then I read through it and I say what CV matches this.
Yeah.
And I saw, yeah.
Yeah, now I can see why you were able to get out, that number of applications every day. But that must have been, that must have taken a lot of time.
It did. And I mean, it could be exhausting. And as you rightly asked earlier on as to what was the rejection like, for the fact that I was applying that way and just kept the motion on, didn't really excluded the fact that I got multiple rejection. I had a friend, and just a little bit of a diver. I had a friend that actually he created a different email folder for dropping all the rejection. As it comes in, he just drops it in there. He doesn't even bother to read it. And one of the interesting things with that is that you see things like the moment you open up an email you received and you say, unfortunately, don't worry. Regrettably, don't worry. Don't bother reading it. Don't spoil your day. But yes, a lot of that. And it was an emotional roller coaster. I must say it was an emotional roller coaster. But what kept me going is, my trust in God, my willpower that I would get through this. And I keep saying to myself all through those periods that all I need is one person to believe in me, right? One person to say that and so I was more focused on the yes and the one yes, not multiple yes, because multiple yes then gives you a bit of a confusion of who to choose. I was looking for one yes. So the no was, okay, it's not for me, so there's no point. One yes is what I'm after. So that made me go through that up until when I landed my first job.
And this company that eventually sponsored you, just a bit about them. Had you heard about them before? Was it a large company that is quite popular?
Okay, really good one. The company that I finally started off my career in the UK, professional career, I could actually say. I didn't apply for the role, and I'll take us through the journey.
Oh, wow.
I didn't apply for the role, so again, when I said. When I was applying and doing all those sort of, aggressive application, I was quite strategic. And one of the advice that I got very early on was put in your CVs in terms of, I don't know how now I've got the right word, have an account in different job boards. So job boards, for example, there is CV library. There is, the names of different job boards where you can open an account, Indeed and the rest, yes. And then put in your CV there. So, and then put in your interests. So your interests in terms of the roles you're looking out for. And whenever there is a role that comes up, it would send you some sort of an alert that there's a new role out, and quickly I'm applying. And that's how strategic that I was. So for CV library, the reason I said CV library is because that was one that I was quite very, very focused on. And I had an account at CV library. And one of those days, after I had the 2 rejections from these 2 big businesses at the time for core electrical role, I just got a call from a recruiter and said, "Oh, Sam, we've just seen your CV. And would you be interested in this role?" Literally, that was it. Would you be interested in this role? I said yes, and they said, okay, they would like to tell me about the role and everything, and just go through the normal recruiter questions and what I've done. And there, I was straight told, are you available for an interview in the next 3 days? So at the time, they were speaking to me on a Wednesday, and I was called for an interview for a Friday for a role I didn't apply for. And so when they sent me the informations, they would give you informations. That was the first time I knew about the business. They're called UK Power Reserve. It's an American-based company, but right at the moment, they've been bought over by a Singaporean company called Semco. So they're now called Semco, which is quite a big business also. But at the time, I'd not known UK Power Reserve, but I knew UK Power Network. So the UK Power Network is the one of the sort of DISCOs, power distribution companies. Why UK Power Reserve is more on the power generation side. So the generating power from gas fired and store sites sort of. So that was my first encounter with UK Power Reserve. I went into and started reading about them, what they do, and for me, because I had done my thesis or was actually doing my thesis at the time. In renewable, and my topic of study was a blend or a hybrid of solar power and combining that with the grit. So it was quite interesting to know that sort of thing is what these guys do. And straight away, it built my interest for the role.
Yeah.
And like you said, going into the interview, I mean, I would never exclude God factor in it and how God favored me through. So I need to really put it there because it was God's favor. But then going into the interview, talking through what I've done and just normal interview processes, literally, I go home that same day. It didn't take up to an hour or two. I got a call back and I was offered the role. So I was offered the role. So literally, I got a call on a Wednesday, went in for an interview on a Friday, got the role. While I was back for the interview, just maybe 1 or 2 hours afterwards, while I got home, I got the role. So, I mean, when I think about it, I mean, but I need to say something, right? You know, when I said earlier that I was quite strategic about applying and was more focused on the yes. In hindsight now, looking back, what actually happened was all of the rejection, all of the recruiter call was preparing me for this one interview. Because I remember so many interviews, and I think I need to say it out to someone that is really tense and exhausted with application and recruiters calling you and probably telling, you know, they will tell you, say this all. What is happening is that you're building yourself for that one special moment whereby, because a lot is being built, I must say, because, you know, for the first time you have an interview, you're nervous, and interviewers can see through your nervousness, and in some case you're in a way you're too eager for it, and nobody will give you a job if they think they're helping you. Forget about what happens in Nigeria. You have to bring something to the table, and at the least of it, let your confidence, how you speak, how you communicate what you're bringing to the table, really show that. And that doesn't come by just a first pass of an interview. It comes in with so much training over time. And so even if I could say, oh, I got an interview, I got a call on a Wednesday, and on a Friday I landed the role. No, I think what had happened is all the months of interviews, rejection had prepared me for that moment. Preparation, going back, I would have an interview and I would remember, oh my God, I didn't say this. Oh, how come did I? And then, yes, they didn't give me the call. I was okay. The next time I receive a call, I'll probably say this way. Maybe the way I put it, I was a bit upfront on this, and it looks like that's why I lost the opportunity. And just doing like a score sheet of why every interview failed, and just getting better and better and better.
Wow. Sam, that story is, I've not heard that one before, I'll be honest. I've not heard that one before, especially for a foreign national. Which brings me to my next question, or should I say my next two questions.
Yeah.
At the point of that interview, conversation about sponsorship come up while you were in the interview, or did it come up afterwards, after they had offered you the job?
No. So, and Obina, your last guest, or I don't know, I watched this, so it was quite interesting because he gave some very great nuggets. And one of the key things he said was there is a list, which I believe a lot of people are aware of. And if you're watching this and you're not aware of it, please quickly Google the tier 2 sponsorship list in terms of companies that are approved sponsors. So it saves you the energy of applying to a company that might end up not being able to sponsor, because it takes a lot of responsibility on their shoulders, both financially and being responsible for you in the country. So the first thing for me and all of my sort of jump on was I would always look at the company and see if they sponsor. Well, interestingly, when I went in for this role at this company, I wasn't asked any question about sponsorship, but I knew the sponsor. So I didn't really bother. I just knew that the sponsor, for some reason, which I don't know why, they didn't ask me for sponsorship. But, you know, fast forward to when I've gotten the job and I came in the first day to sort of go through the onboarding process. And then as I was going through it, they said, oh, have you got sort of, you know, your work permit, or are you a British citizen? I said, no, I'm not British. I was saying to the HR very confidently that, oh, I know you sponsor. So she said, oh, wait, give me a second. I said, I know you sponsor. I have checked it and I know you sponsor. There's so much confidence that I had, but there's a story there. Yeah. And she was like, oh, okay, all right, give me a second. Let me go do some checks. Apparently, what had happened was, number one, the company is an American company, but the only people that they have sponsored are the directors of the company, obviously, that are Americans. that is coming. That means every other employee are in one way. I've got either the British nationals or Europeans. Or that, so they haven't done any sponsorship for an actual work, myself at my level, rather than the directors of the company that Americans are coming. So even at the time, the HR speaking to me was not well informed of that process. So what had happened is, one, because I'd already known that they sponsored, but me in front of the HR, she is just new and I've just started. So to be fair to her, she's just started and she just said, oh, she wasn't involved in those processes for the other guys. So that's what makes it really interesting. But I think the key nugget is the fact that I had that knowledge that they sponsor. So with that confidence saying they sponsor, she said, okay, don't worry, you know what, crack on, and we'll get back to you. And then, you know what, carry on with your onboarding process. So
wow. Well, just going slightly further now, Sam. Project management. I think you got sponsored for this role as a project manager. Is that correct?
Okay. Yes. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So that was sort of my entrance into Tier 2 visa as an assistant project manager. Correct. Yes. So obviously I was sponsored as an assistant project manager. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So still going back to something I mentioned earlier about sectors that seem to be more probable, so to speak, get sponsorship. From your experience now, having worked in the project management sector or field or that path for a couple of years now, from your experience, is that still a popular route that one can take while looking for a skilled worker visa? And the reason I ask this is because, like I said, I work in tech. I know it's more likely you will find openings. I don't know many people that have gotten sponsorship project management. So from your own experience, is that a space that is actually quite open and quite embracing of project management for sponsors?
I mean, my understanding of, and you rightly said this at the start, that there are different sort of industries that are more likely to sponsor. And, at the time back then in 2016, for an international, specifically outside of Europe, to be able to be sponsored, the business, and most people might know about this, would have to prove that skill or that role that you're applying for, no one within the UK at the time, there was no Brexit. The UK was part of the Europe. That no one within the UK and the entire Europe has got that skill, and hence they can then sponsor you. So it was even much tougher then, because they have to prove by showcasing that no other person is able to take this role at the time. But it's quite interesting, because if someone that just looks at project management, you can tell that there'll be an influx of a lot of people, both British nationals or the Europeans, that would go into it. But again, it's a case by case study, because people, businesses employ based not just because of your skill. I think so, and I think maybe I would say that there's a lot that goes into employment. Your personality, your persona, a good interviewer can tell what drives you. And the moment they can check some box, including your skill and your sort of your background, then it's a full package. So I know it's easier to say the project management is flooded, and if I could do a sort of a scale to equate against the sort of core engineering skills, which you would notice that at least here in the UK, there is more opportunity for people to be employed in sort of an engineering industry and core engineering, as opposed to sort of management field. And that's true. However, I always want to balance that with, if you've got something that is unique, no matter the space, just try, and someone will find you, because you bring something to the table, and you bring a solution to the table.
Yeah, rounding up now, Sam. If I'm new to the UK now, I've come into the UK, like you, have a background in a different field, or I'm looking at the possibility of getting, let's say specifically project management, because I have project management. Where would you advise me to start? What do I do? Certifications that I should try and get, networks I should try and connect.
Yeah, I mean, I use myself as an example, but again, my story is quite unique to me because it's really unique. And just before I dive into answering the question, I really want to put it out there and really emphasize that if you connect, if sort of the blueprint of my story fits into yours, then maybe you can sort of follow it. There are things, there are nuggets and guides. I completely understand, but also just understand your landscape and what you can do. And then that would really tell on what sort of your outcome or the result could be. So just answering your question, Martin, for me, you see, diving into project management, I didn't do any training. You see, most people now are sort of very focused on, I have to do Prince 2, I have to do PNP, I have to study. Again, it's unique to me. But I would say, first of all, about myself, and in hindsight now, should I have done that? Yes, if I had the opportunity, if I had the resources to do that, I would have done that. But I think one of the key things with me, because I'd already had experiences in project management in my previous role, which in a way gave me some sort of ground to answer some questions to do with timeline, delivering to deadlines, managing meetings, reporting. So all those few things, I had some few nuggets in my in the tips of my fingers that could run to some terminologies, right? But again, I'm looking back, because one thing with any role is you need to be aware of the jargons in that field. So the moment you speak to me 2-3 minutes, you would know I'm a project manager, because I'm talking about timelines, I'm talking about risk, I'm talking about reporting, these are jargons in the field, but that came in over time. And if I'm to advise someone that is just starting up, please, do trainings that are within your capacity or what you can afford. I mean, if you've got resources to enroll in Prince 2, please do, because those will then give you the sort of the flavor in the field, so that when you're in front of an interviewer for a role that is project management, they want to see you use the what we call the lingua franca. Yeah, so I would advise that that if you're looking at going into that field of project management, please, if you've got access to any sort of training, do it within your capacity, do it. But most of these things sometimes are innate, because beyond you answering questions, they could tell if you're just reading by the book, because especially when it comes to, any field, not looking at project management, any field, if you're born for it, you'd see yourself you answer question out of impulse, and they can tell that this is you. You're not trying to read the books to answer a question. Yeah.
And that has been very enlightening. Yeah, no, it's been great talking to you, man. And
no, thanks, Martin. I'm excited to share my story, and I'd only say it's the grace of God and our enthusiasm. And for someone out there that you're frustrated, especially looking out for roles, and you're sort of job hunting, and maybe you're like myself or Martin, that have gone through that terrain of getting in several rejections. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. But just as an advice of what I took on, I focus on one yes. All I need is one person to believe in me. There will be so many no's, but there will be one yes that would get you into the ladder. And if there's nothing else that encourages you, tell yourself that every no or every interview you go into and you don't get it just trains you for that perfect one. So I wish you the very best, and I want to hear your story.